very good evening and welcome to our June edition of Reparations Now. In the studio with us this evening are, well, it's two male and one female. No, we're having our other female, our young poet laureate. She's coming in a little later. To our extreme right is Brother Royston Peters, and he is the representative from Essequibo on the Guyana Reparations Committee. In the center, in this blue suit, is Brother Eric Phillips. And I think I must say this, he is a vice chairman of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. So we must tip our hats to you for that achievement. I was there when they appointed you, and one of them said, we got to reward Eric for the work that he's doing. So that's how we got there, for the hard work that the Guyana Reparations Committee is putting in. And to the extreme left is our beautiful Wazero, Esther Gittins. And then I heard Sister Crystal Crawford smiling, laughing somewhere, but you're going to get to see her. This evening, we have a very interesting program for you. But before we go into that, you know, it was on the 2nd of April, 1810, that Africans were banned from being Africans in Guyana. They couldn't practice their culture on pain of death or incarceration. So it's only fitting that the Ministry of Culture should sponsor a program like this, where African people get to discuss their issues freely without fear and without recrimination. We're going to be looking at Black Wall Street and the village movement in Guyana also too. We're going to be looking also to why it's time for reparations, beautiful cities of Africa, and King Tut. And as I said, our rising star, Sister Crystal Crawford. The intention is to show African people issues or images of Africa which will make them proud. And without much further ado, we go into Wake Up Everybody.
My name is Tobe Chukwu Dubem Wigwe. I'm an Igbo boy from the southwest side of Houston, Texas, and it is an honor to be able to do our version of Wake Up Everybody by the legendary Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, a.k.a. Teddy Pendergrass. So today, as you hear my baby talking in the background, I am Toby Pendergrass. Let's go. Wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backwards thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war and poverty. Wake up all you teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. Cause they're the ones who's coming up and the world is in their hands. So when you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. World won't get no better. Yeah. If you just let it be. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it, yeah. For you and me. For you and me. For you and me. For you and me. Wake up all you doctors, make the old people well. They're the ones who suffer and catch all the hell. But they don't have so very long before the judgment day. So won't you make them happy before they pass away? Wake up all you builders, time to build a new land. I know we can do it if we all lend a hand. The only thing we have to do is put it in our mind. Surely things will work out. They do it every time. Everybody say, well, won't get no better. Yeah. The world won't get no better. The hood won't get no better. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it, yeah. Just you and me. Everybody say the world won't get no better. The hood won't get no better. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it, yeah. Just you and me. Just you and me. You and me. You and me. Say Maya.
The world won't get no better, and my hood won't get no better. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it,
Yeah.
you and me.
Talk to him, Luke.
The world won't get no better. My hood won't get no better. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it, yeah, for you and me.
Talk to him, Dave.
The world won't get no better. My hood won't get no better.
Yeah.
World won't get no better. You gotta change it, yo.
Yeah.
You and me, 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 you and me. You gotta change it, yo. 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 You gotta change. You gotta change.
Yeah.
You gotta change.
Yeah.
You gotta change.
You going.
You gotta change.
Yeah.
You gotta change.
Yeah.
You gotta change.
Yeah.
You gotta change.
No music.
You gotta change. 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 You gotta change.
My name is Tobe Chukwudu Bemwikwe. I'm from the southwest side of Houston, Texas. We love y'all. Make the change. Don't let 2021 be 2020 part 2 for you. You know what I'm saying? We love y'all. Shout out to my Uncle Nell. Shout out to the keyboard kid, Nick Humes. Shout out to David Michael White, Luke Whitney, Maya Tucker. My queen, my everything except my G.O.D. FAT. My wife Fat and my babies. Baby Fat, come here. There you go. Come here, my baby. She is a clown. Come on, my baby. Do me a favor, look there, say hi. Say hi. And we love y'all. Peace.
You've probably never read about the Tulsa race riots in history books when you were in school, but it's definitely a story that's worth knowing about, especially considering the riots that are currently taking place in Baltimore. The Tulsa race riots occurred in 1921, and it was basically a war by the KKK against a very successful and prosperous black community referred to as Black Wall Street. According to reports, the best description of Black Wall Street, or Little Africa as it was also known, would be to compare it to a mini Beverly Hills. It was the golden door of the black community during the early 1900s, and it proved that African Americans could create a successful infrastructure. Black America's most prosperous community, Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, went up in flames June 1st, 1921 in a KKK-led Tulsa race riot. This community consisted of individuals that looked out for one another. But more than that, it consisted of individuals that were beyond successful. Some of the most intelligent minds got together and created some of the most successful businesses. They looked out for one another. They created an education system that we can only dream of today. They believed in nepotism only because these black individuals had been so disenfranchised by society that they felt that they could only look out for one another. And as a result, money stayed in their community. In fact, it was passed off about 100 times within the community before it left the community. Right now, when it comes to a black neighborhood, $1 lasts in that neighborhood for about 15 minutes and then it leaves. And so they managed to create a society that was successful. They were prospering. But it turns out that white individuals in neighboring areas were not too happy about that, particularly the KKK. So this led to a riot, and the way the KKK crafted this riot shows you exactly how deep that jealousy and that envy was. What they did is they accused a man of raping a white woman. But of course that man didn't rape anyone. They just wanted to accuse him so they could go into the community and start violence and trouble. And so they accused this man. A number of KKK members go into the community, and as one black man is armed, ready to defend himself, he's confronted by a white individual who asks him what he's about to do with that gun. And he tells the white man, well, I'm going to do what I need to do if I need to defend myself. At that point, there was a physical altercation over the gun. The white man gets shot and he's killed, and then the riots erupt. Now, the outcome of this is beyond disturbing. The night's carnage left 3,000 African Americans dead and over 600 successful businesses lost. Among these were 21 churches, 21 restaurants, 30 grocery stores, and 2 movie theaters, plus a hospital, a bank, a post office, libraries, schools, law offices, a half-dozen private airplanes, and even a bus system. So the KKK goes into the successful black community and absolutely destroys it. And so when we talk about violence in the United States, and when we talk about things like white privilege or institutional racism, this is why it's incredibly important to take these issues seriously. Because when you look at the black community and you wonder why it is that they're angry, why it is that they're rioting, why it is that they're fighting back against things like police brutality and institutional racism, you have to look at the historical context of this country. You have to consider the fact that there was no restitution in this case. These people, 3,000 people, lost their lives. Their businesses were lost. What they had built was completely demolished. And you fast forward to today and you look at statistics and you realize, yeah, maybe things aren't quite as violent as the Tulsa race riots, but you have to consider the fact that African Americans are 4 times more likely to get arrested for marijuana. In fact, if you have a black-sounding name, you are 50% less likely to get hired for a job. When you look at our private prisons, or if you look at the school-to-prison pipeline, African Americans and Latinos are much more likely to be victims of that. And so these are the types of things that are holding them back. This is a type of institutional racism that we talk about on the show on a regular basis. And this is the type of story that we don't learn about in history classes. And again, you look at something like this and you realize that if you just create an opportunity for people to prosper, they will prosper, regardless of their race, regardless of their background. That's why education is important. That's why making sure that you give everyone an equal opportunity is important. And that's why it's incredibly important to take stories like the Baltimore riots as seriously as possible and understand that even though there are those who are violent and are doing things that might be considered wrong, there are also those who are legitimately arguing about something that they've been victims of for a very long time.
Final judgment, Black Wall Street. As the presenter made some very interesting observations. She spoke about the circulation of cash within the black community. She spoke about the prosperous black community in the United States of America. And we're going to go into a little discussion of the prosperous black community in Guyana that got destroyed by the same white supremacist culture. One which took away from Africans approximately 200 plantations and vested them into the state. Those are private properties bought by Africans after 1838, but by 1866, the state of Guyana, using 12 nefarious strategies, took it back. Brother Royston, lead us off in this conversation. And, you know, please don't try to sing, like, change it. Yeah, we know we got to change it, but don't try. We want the program to continue, so.
All right, good evening and thank you, Jonathan. You know, straight off, when I did a bit of reflection some days ago, I recognized that there are, on a pillar of four sets of, well, in terms of resources to really make you go forward, there are four sets of things that are essential for any kind of movement forward. The first of it is land. The second is labor or human resources, human capital. The third is capital, actual capital. And the fourth is enterprise. And so for us, we came to this place called Guyana, where our grandparents literally built it up, developed it, made it livable, and established livelihood centers all across this country. And one of the first things that happened to them was that thing which they first built with was removed from them, the land element. And so though we may have...
When you say removed from them...
But they were taken away. I mean, okay. you outlined earlier that
right.
they used a number of strategies to deprive us of our lands, and perhaps we can reflect on some of those lands, those areas that we would have lost. I mean, one such is Rosal, Duziknan, Mahaika, all those areas were once bought by our people, and it's simply gone.
Karika,
yeah, exactly. And so that is a reality. And so when you look at us as a people, at our resource base, and you recognize that land has been depleting us, our communities, we may have human capital, human resources, but you know, that is there. We don't have the actual capital to convert into actual business or to enterprise, the fourth leg. So we have to now look to see, well, where do we position ourselves? Where are we really in this whole trajectory? And the land that we have, you notice that even now, arms of the state is still up to this day trying to remove lands from our people. I mean, well, it's forestry lands or mining lands, GGMC is doing it as we speak. There are our brothers with lands who they are using all sorts of methods to deprive of. And so it's happening even today. That's the unfortunate thing. And so for me, we have to perhaps find a way to use what we have in terms of, well, all we have is the human resources and some remaining lands of those plantations we bought, and see to what extent we can exploit them along some very, very essential lines. We still have a tremendous abundance of water. We haven't really converted that into real capital. We have some mineral resources that are there. We have to go find them and make use of them. There's an element of agriculture which we are so fond of, and we have to find a way to convert that into enterprise. That is a million-dollar question. How do we do that conversion? And we have to find the requisite resource or the requisite capital to make that transition. That is a working process, but it depends a whole lot of other elements, including reliable marketing.
So, Brother Royston, you're saying that this is the way in which we wake up, and we got to change the way we are treating our lands.
Certainly.
For ourselves.
Certainly.
Let me bring in Brother Eric here. There were 12 strategies that were used: discriminatory taxation, state terrorism, the use of the legislature, immigration, slander, flooding, denying us opportunities to establish our enterprises in those 220 economic spaces that we attempted to develop. What do you think would have been the consequences for us today of the state at that particular point in time? And in our book, Guyana Reparations Story, I think you have listed that these 18 discriminatory actions which the state has enacted against African people historically. So the state, Brother Eric, you take it up from there.
Thanks, Brother Jonathan. let's go back to the Black Wall Street and let us understand that the village movement was our Black Wall Street.
Yes.
And in the same way the Black Wall Street was destroyed, our village movement was attacked. And so generational wealth, which would have been created under the Black Wall Street and would have made black Americans much wealthier today, was destroyed. In the same way in the village movement, generational wealth was destroyed. Instead of us using capital and our human resources and buying land, remember we spent $2.5 million in the first 12 years,
Yes.
equivalent to over 200 million US in land and property in improving the lands. The state used
Look,
all
I want
sorts
you
of
to
tricks.
go over that sum. Because
Yeah.
people they say that black people didn't do nothing inside this country, sir. But let people know how much money we spend to make this place livable, even after hundreds of years of working for nothing.
Well, you're even getting more deeper because we
Yes.
worked 200 years here for free. We indigenized Guyana. We
Yes.
made it livable. It's always been beneath sea level. We helped we moved 100 million tons of earth. We cleared 9 million acres or 15,000 square miles. If we were paid for that, that would be equivalent to about $2 trillion today. So that wealth
it.
was denied us. Then when we bought our villages, saving our money, $2.5 million within 12 years.
Within 12 years.
That in itself is a $200 million US investment. That would have created generational wealth that we could now use
Exactly.
to get into oil and gas.
Exactly.
We would have had our own banks. Today we don't have banks. If we want to go to be an entrepreneur today, and we go to the 6 banks in Guyana, we don't have any collateral. Now, collateral would have been the village movement and all the antecedents that came out of that. So it's a historical, how can I put it, denial of our generational wealth. Additionally, remember, we could not sell directly to the British.
Exactly.
They gave Portuguese licenses in our villages, so we had to sell to the Portuguese, who sold to the British. The Portuguese are rich today. 3,000 Portuguese own about 12% of GDP off of our backs. So when you look at all the things that were done to us, our Wall Street, which was the village movement, which would have created generational wealth for us, which would have made us as wealthy as any other group in Guyana. As a matter of fact, more wealthy, because we were the original entrepreneurs, including 5 women, Hopkinson, Molly Archer, Catherine Thom. All those people, all those women came together to buy Victoria with the first village. And then we bought all these other villages. And over time, you see, we have corps. About 8 years ago, there were 200 corps owned by black people who were under pressure from the government. Those corps are still under pressure. Those corps have a lot of land. Because we can't get capital from the banks to develop
can't
those
develop,
corps,
right.
develop those lands, we're again being made poorer. And that's what happened in the Black Wall Street. So we have a direct equivalency to the Black Wall Street.
You know
and
this-
our people need to understand that, because we don't understand why we are poor. And we're not poor. We are industrious. A freed African in Guyana was worth 51 pounds at emancipation, compared to 17 pounds for others in the Caribbean.
In terms of
And,
reparations.
and our village movement wasn't by chance, because this 51 pounds showed that we were the best people in the Caribbean in terms of production. And those same people showed it was in their DNA, by going and buy villages. And that was the only entrepreneurial effort of that type in the entire British colony after slavery. We were the only ones in Guyana who went and bought villages. So we had the enterprise, we had the entrepreneurship, we bought the lands. But like the KKK in the States, and like the government, they intervene to prevent us from getting wealthy. They're always afraid when we're alone and when we can do our own thing,
From developing that generational wealth, which would have placed us in a better
which is
state
handicapping
today.
us today because we
it's-
can't get in oil and gas.
It's not that we can't do it, it's that we try it, but the powerful have always intervened in stopping us, just like they intervened in Africa to bring us
And
down
look
here.
today, we're
They
getting house
intervened in
lots,
keeping us where
but
we
the
are.
house lots is really not generational wealth. The generational wealth is the commercial lands that we're giving Brazilians to do soy and corn today, just recently. So it continues and it continues, and our politicians are clueless as to what's really going on.
So that, in terms of getting up and changing it, we have to take all of this into consideration.
We have to understand our history, because we're like a tree without water, as Marcus Garvey said.
Wazero,
Yes. Thank you, Brother Jonathan. Well, I like to look at it from this angle. More effective than the flooding our villages, flooding our farms, and spraying our crops with poison that would kill them was the school, the education, and the church system. Let's not skirt around that because those were the systems they used to make us ignore the value of land and not want to deal with it. And we know land is a basis of generational wealth. So they would say that our ancestors were uneducated. It is not that they might not have known to speak and write English, but they were educated enough to set up the Black Wall Street, and they were educated enough and effective enough to set up their own governance system and purchase all of those plantations, not villages. And we know for a fact that they set them up as economic hubs. And similar to the Black Wall Street, it was our village movement because we bought from ourselves, we supported ourselves, we fed ourselves, we clothed ourselves, and the school and the church is what they use to target to take us away from that. The education is one size fits all. So by the time you are graduated, you cannot give back to your community. They use the system to cause a brain drain, take us away from the things that would make us realize our wealth and our riches.
But this
And
is what-
Jonathan, I
yeah.
wore this suit today as another example. It took us away from our culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, most
If we
importantly.
had followed our culture and we had developed the villages and the education system and the religious systems had not intervened, we won't want to be British.
So you're using reverse psychology.
Yes.
But this is what I want to say. You know, it's years we've been coming on these television programs, and we talking and we talking and we talking about the problem. But this is how I see it. You know, in exam, they don't give you solutions. You know, they give you problems,
True.
and all we doing is repeating the problem. So we sit down in the exam with the exam paper. Now we talk, hey, this problem hard, this problem hard, this is the problem, that's the problem, that's the problem, that's the problem, and we ain't setting about working out the solution for ourselves.
No, it's
We
worse.
are,
Jonathan.
we are.
It's worse now. We want multiple choice.
The song say, wake up everybody.
Wake up. But I
Look, it's
think, brother,
time, it's
Jonathan,
time we do something. So let me talk to we people, let me
we
tell
are
we people
doing
about something.
something.
No,
That is why we have reparations now, and this is how we started. We are doing something, and
educated.
from the response we get in the streets and in the villages and communities, we know we are doing our part by disseminating this information, because there are many persons who have not heard the things that we've said here. And every time we say it might seem as though we keep repeating, but I'm quite sure there are persons in the audience or some of our viewers never heard what we said tonight.
So basically, put on a callaloo seed, put on a okra seed. This is what you're saying?
Yes, that's what we've been doing.
Buy
That's
a
what we
blender.
are
We're
doing.
saying
Buy a
pool,
blender.
learn from the village movement.
Yes.
Yes.
Pool your resources.
Yes.
Be self-independent.
Yes.
Yes.
Look at yourself as a community.
Circulate your dollar
Right?
in your
It could-
community.
buy from your
Buy
friends,
from
buy from
yourself.
your neighbor.
Love yourself.
Go back to the land.
Yes.
Go back to agriculture. Feed
Yes.
yourself.
Ring bang.
Ring
Ring
back
bang.
for life.
Yes. Ring bang for life. Well, yeah, I think, and
I
this is
wanna-
what, Brother Royston, I want to emphasize this thing. This is what we got to do. We got to stop talking, we got to stop complaining, and we got to start doing.
We are.
Because we are doers.
Doers.
We have been doing, we take a shot, but you know in boxing when you take a shot and you lie down, when you get up and you fight again. It's time for us to fight again. Brother Royston.
Right. I want to point out a couple of things. One is there has been in the political sphere, there has been an economic twist in the whole arrangement. We would have learned, and we have been still learning, go to school, take your education, and get a good job. But in the sphere of things, that ain't working. And so go to school and learn, certainly. But we have to set about the process of creating our own employment. Creating your own employment. Because what has happened is that, and under this ERP program sometime in 1987, 1988 roundabout, the country made a turn. So that trajectory we're on has
Started in
moved.
1985.
Right, in 85, right. And so later on, it shifted again, where now the private sector has been touted as being some engine of growth. It's not necessarily so, but that's what it's been touted. But in actual fact, what's happening, the resources for development of this country is going off in that direction. So you stay in the private sector, the resources gone somewhere else. So you have to get with it and understand that in this, what you want to call it a mixed arrangement, where the private sector and the state is working hand in hand, and of course the cooperatives should be part of that as well. We have to use that which we know best, cooperativism, cooperatives, and do the work. Mining is still relevant, agriculture is still relevant, and of course the water management, you have to get about the process of doing that well, element of tourism and all of that. We have to look at those entities and make best of them.
So your solution, cooperatives,
Agriculture, mining,
agriculture,
yeah,
etc.
and the total
Problems.
ecosystem management.
Answers to the problems.
Yeah.
Look, I really want to hear Little Black Girl, you know. So what we can do is that we can take this video so that our poet laureate can slip in, as Brother Royston slips out. So it's the YouTube video from Mondale, Dr. Rogers, Marcus Garvey, Professor Lunk, and the whole crew. Those have passed away. Professor Lunk, the old the stalwart, is still with us. So,
In memory of them.
this is the video in memory.
The racial wealth gap is, as you know, is staggering. Blacks are about 13% of the U.S. population, but only have 2.6% of the nation's wealth. And that translates into an average household differential between blacks and whites in net worth of about $800,000 in 2016 dollars. That's the gap that needs to be closed by a reparations program. In the aftermath of the Civil War, the ancestors of today's living Black Americans were promised restitution for their years of slavery in the form of 40-acre land grants that were never given to them. So we estimated that if you took the most conservative interpretation of that allocation, it would be 10 acres per formerly enslaved person. So there were 4 million folks who were emancipated at the end of the Civil War. So that would mean 40 million acres of land should have been allocated to them on that basis. And that's the low end estimate. The present value would probably be anywhere between $4 and $6 trillion. The Black rate of mortality nationally that's derived from data drawn from the states that actually have collected data on the basis of race and ethnicity. The Black mortality rate is 2.2 times as high as both the Latino and the Asian rate, and is 2.4 times as high as the white rate. And if we explore potential explanations why that's the case, I think it can be linked in some significant ways to wealth differentials. So, for example, wealth position makes it more essential for Blacks to hold low-wage employment in arenas where their work is deemed essential, even if they are not deemed essential. I would like people to pay close attention not only to what happened in Tulsa in 1921, but the entire wave of white massacres that took place from the end of the Civil War up until World War II. These massacres not only cost Black people their lives, but also resulted in extensive damage to black property or the appropriation of that property by whites. I think people need to have a much better understanding of the history of white violence in the United States and how that's connected to the racial wealth gap. But if we're going to address the question of restitution for black Americans for the cumulative effects of slavery, the period of Jim Crow or legal segregation in the United States, accompanied by white terror campaigns, and ongoing atrocities like mass incarceration, police executions of unarmed blacks, discrimination in labor markets, in credit markets, in housing markets, then we need something that is going to focus on the racial wealth gap, which, to my way of thinking, captures the cumulative intergenerational consequences of this entire trajectory of harms. The GI Bill is established in such a way after World War II that it's administered in a decentralized fashion, which gave Southern authorities complete discretion over who would get the benefits. So, for example, in the state of Mississippi, only 2 GIs who were black veterans received any mortgage support from the GI Bill. In the book that I've just completed with Kirsten Mullen, From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century, we argue that the payments might be made in the form of endowments or a trust account, where individuals would be allowed to spend the interest off the account in any given year, but could only dip into the principal subject to approval for a plan of action or a proposal that they develop. In the present moment, the federal government overnight essentially came up with, well, some people say it's $2.2 trillion. Some people say it's as much as $6 trillion because of the loans that were made by the Federal Reserve Board. But it came up with that money overnight. There were no new taxes administered. And I think that the present experience, or the current experience, demonstrates that the federal government can spend on virtually anything it wants to spend on. You're denying all newly emancipated black Americans, virtually all of them, you're denying them any initial stake in wealth as compensation for their years of forced labor and forced time under slavery. That's how you begin to create, that's the origin point, I think, for the contemporary racial wealth gap. That's where it started.
I pray you'll be eyes and watch us where we go and help us to be wise in times when we don't know. Let this be our prayer when we lose our way. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace, to a place where we'll be safe.
I pray we'll find your light
Pray we'll find your light
and hold it in our heart.
and hold it in our heart.
When stars go out each night,
Stars go out each night.
remind us where you are.
Remind us where you are.
Let this be our prayer
Let this be our prayer.
when shadows fill our day.
When shadows fill our day.
Oh Lord, lead us to a place of mine.
Guide us with your Guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll be saved. Please to find a place. Guide us with your grace.
I didn't talk about Monday.
Yes, and so that was prayer. Sister Esther, is there anything you'd like to say in terms of prayer before we go to
Like
poem?
you, I'm anxious to hear our in-house poet
Sister
and rising star.
Sister Crystal? I mean, when I hear them brothers and sisters sing, when I sit down and I watch you and the way you just write poem, I just say, Lord, thank you for making me black. Just make me more black. Let me get a little black girl.
Yes.
Thank you. Little black girl, why do you hate your skin, your hair, your smile, zest, aura, presence, physique? Why do you hate your voice, your tone, your bravery? Ignore the world. They condemn what they don't understand. They criticize what cannot be learned. They hate what cannot be copied. Dear black girl, you are. You are everything and more. Everything they said you couldn't do, couldn't be. You are wise, kind, beautiful, talented, gifted. You are unique. You are graceful. You are feminine. You are the freaking print, not just blue, black, white, gold, yellow, every color of the rainbow. You carry greatness in your strides, nations in your womb, kings in your passion. Little black girl, you represent an entire generation. You were created to break the chains of every oppression, every chain of self-doubt, self-hate. For you were created to win. Your crown of curls is every proof that you are a queen. Walk in the ways of Queen Candace, Queen Makeda, Nefertiti, Ya Asantewa, Oprah Winfrey, Susu Bini, Maya Angelou. But above all, walk in your greatness, for that's what you were created to be.
You know, you made no. Let us put our hands together. Fantastic poem.
Thank you.
There's a line in that poem. I don't think you understand the power of it. What cannot be copied? That little black girls have something in them that cannot be copied. You know, there got some people in this world who hate we because we got something that they could never get, that they want. Sister Esther, you want to make a comment? Then we go to Brother Eric.
Yes. Well, my task is to say a bit about Marcus Messiah Garvey. He is one of the heroes in the African community. He is someone we all should look up to and take a pattern out of. We saw the tremendous work he did coming from where he started, as self-taught. And I would like to say that it's not easy. I mean, how he had to work and maneuver himself to achieve the things that he achieved. He's one of the greatest black men in the world has ever seen. He's gathered the largest, or organized the largest amount of Africans in a movement that was mostly entrepreneurial. I should say he started the Black Star Liner and many other businesses. He owned theaters, he owned hotels, ships, you name it. He is someone we should all study and take a page out of his book. Yes, Marcus Messiah Garvey, born on the 17th of August.
Yes,
Brother Eric.
Jonathan. The song Prayer was to acknowledge all the people we've been losing of late. As you know, Mondale Smith, Daphne Rogers, they were buried today. Marcus Garvey on June 10th in 1940, that's when he died, so the month of June. And so that song, The Prayer, was to acknowledge all these people who meant so much to us. Dr. Rogers is a cultural icon. She ran the Cultural Center for such a long while. She's part of our fabric, part of the little black girl, the uniqueness. So we wanted to acknowledge not only those individuals, but all of our people in Guyana who are dying because of COVID-19. We want them to recognize that we are here for them, that we know that this is a pandemic. We want our people to know that they need to protect themselves, whether it's by wearing masks. I've taken the vaccination because we're next to Brazil. We don't know what else is there. But that song was particularly for that.
Yes, we also
we need to
remember
acknowledge
Sister Olga Bacchus.
Sister Olga Bacchus from
Yeah.
Reparations. We lost Brother Wickham. But every Guyanese who's out there, be careful. Life is precious. We need you to be here so that we can build this generational wealth. We need our grandmothers and grandparents, because they're mainly older people who are dying, to nurture our grandchildren so that little black girls and them can come out. So that's very important. We wanted to play that song.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Eric. We have got, unfortunately, we're running out of time, so we have to cut a little bit. So I think that it would be useful for us to show King Tut, because African people believe, this is what the media has beamed to them, that they're nothing,
we're
that they're not
savages.
made, we're savages, etc. So, a people without a knowledge, I think you said this already, people without a knowledge of their history is like a tree without water for its roots. And so I'll give Sister Crystal, by way of acknowledgement of that fantastic poem that she did, I give you 30 seconds to talk about it, and then we go to King Tut, and then we wrap up.
I'll talk about my poem.
Yes.
I wrote this poem because of the world's concept of black people and that we are nothing, and like what Brother Eric said, we live in an anti-black racist society. So little black girl for me, I was speaking to myself, to
Okay.
my people. Why do you hate your skin? You're here. This is what characterizes us as our people, as melanin, as kings and queens. So little black girl was not just a message to people, but to myself, to love myself, that I am unique, I am beautiful. The world hates what they cannot copy. Say it. That's it.
And it makes me love myself even more, and
Yes.
wish that, when I'm reborn, that I come back shades blacker. Yes. King Tut.
Egypt. Birthplace of one of the most enigmatic civilizations in history. The Pyramid Tombs and the Valley of the Kings, the final resting places of powerful pharaohs. Of the possible 63 tombs in the valley, there is one that outshines the rest and has captured the world's imagination. The tomb of Tutankhamun. The boy king was just 18 years old when he died. But his priceless golden treasures have made him the most famous pharaoh of all time. His funerary riches have been displayed all over the world. But now they are all coming back to Egypt. Cairo. In the shadows of the Great Pyramids, engineers are building a $1 billion museum and research facility. The Grand Egyptian Museum will house all Tutankhamun's 5,000 treasures in one place for the first time in 100 years. One of the centerpieces of the museum will be Tutankhamun's golden coffin. Ahmed Abdrabu is leading the research process to get it ready.
I must be very careful One of the big challenge for me to be responsible for the restoration of one of the masterpiece of Tutankhamun collection.
The coffin was one of many priceless treasures found in Tutankhamun's tomb. When Howard Carter's team opened the tomb in November 1922, they discovered a wealth of treasures and gifts the king would need in the afterlife. 6 disassembled golden chariots, his throne, and provisions of food and wine. Concealed behind a false wall was a stone sarcophagus protecting a gold-plated coffin. Inside it, 2 more coffins, the innermost made of solid gold and covered in gemstones. And inside that, the mummy of Tutankhamun, wearing a magnificent death mask, the most famous find in all of Egypt. Ahmed needs to discover how the ancient artisans built Tutankhamun's golden coffin. The inside is made of wood, but the outside is covered with a thin layer of precious gold.
Must be very, very careful because I am working on one of the masterpiece.
Under the lens, Ahmed discovers an extraordinary secret.
The thickness of the gold leaf, it ranged between 14 and 18 micron.
The ancient artisans could craft gold as thin as shrink wrap. But to get a flawless finish, they could not apply the gold directly onto the uneven chiseled wood. Ahmed investigates closer and finds a mystery layer between the gold and the wood.
This is for the first time to see this.
Ahmed finds a 3,300-year-old secret, known only to the top craftsmen closest to the king.
This textile layer, I think it is linen.
The ancient craftsmen used linen bandages to smooth out the jagged wood and create a perfect finish for the thin gold. Almost 3,500 years later, we are still solving the mysteries of Tutankhamun. Ahmed is on the hunt for more clues.
That's our greatness, Brother Eric.
The interesting thing about this tape is that they said aliens did this because they couldn't understand the sophistication and the technology of black people. We were the first engineers, doctors, lawyers, you name it, scientists. And this particular tomb of King Tut shows all of that.
Man,
Gold.
yes, and that's the reason why I say, just make me black again.
So we're the first aliens too.
So,
You can put it that
Sister
way.
Crystal,
Well,
Sister,
I would just love to say quickly before we close that this won't be our only program for the month. Look for us again on the 4th Sunday. This is a bonus.
okay, and so without, I think we got lined up, I'm Not Afraid. Because we don't have I Am Not Afraid, we go out of this program encouraging you to look for us on the 4th Sunday.
Yes.
We go out saying,
Reparations now.
now.